Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be back this week. Happy to see that you guys have hopefully been watching some of the other videos. I was just checking. I'm happy to see you all on. I hope you guys are having a good summer. I hope getting ready for school isn't going to be too crazy. I just got back from my school. It's slowly getting planned, slowly getting started. We're getting to the end of the summer, which is crazy. So after today, we're going to be 2/3 of the way done with Judges. Woo! Awesome. Great. Today is actually going to be a very quick-paced lesson because we're going to talk about 4 different people, 3 judges, and then someone that is important to the judge's story. Now, I'm not going to go fully over the first person because he's not really a judge. He is part of the reason that he's important for the point that he is in the Bible, and he's very important, so I want you to read him. But his story is one of those stories that doesn't really have a good point in it. And it's mostly just about the sins of people. So we're going to start in Judges chapter 9. We're actually going chapter 9, 10, and 11 today. It won't be too rough. You guys will be able to keep up, hopefully. And then message me if you guys have any questions, if you think I'm going too fast, if you think you've missed something, didn't connect everything. Just message me. Keep me up to date on what you're thinking. Because I think it's good, but who knows? So let's get started. So Judges chapter 9 is all about Abimelek. So last week we talked about Gideon and how Gideon had 70 sons, and he did exactly what the Lord asked him to do after testing him. And he was given the ways to win against the Midianites, who were kept invading the Israelites' land. So Abimelek is one of the 70 sons of Gideon. So at the very beginning of Judges chapter 9, which this is really the entirety of Judges chapter 9, in Judges 9 verse 2, Abimelek is talking to his family and his mother's clan and says, "Ask all the citizens of Shechem, which is better for you, to have all 70 of Jerubbal's, or Gideon's, sons rule over you, or just one man. Remember, I am your flesh and blood." So this was related. So he's related to all of these people, his mother's clan, and he's asking to be king. And the entire story is based on the fact that Gideon was offered to be king, but he reminded everyone that the Lord is our king. Abimelek doesn't do that. He wants to be king, and he actually becomes king, which causes an entire issue to arise. First, because Abimelek is king. Second is because he then hires people to kill his other brothers. All 70 of Gideon's sons are dead, besides Abimelek and then Jotham, who is the youngest son. And Jotham actually reminds people of this parable about trees. And the entire basis is that, are you acting honorable to have Abimelek king? Is it fair to what Gideon did, what his family did? Is it fair to what he did to risk his life for the Midianites, for the Lord? and then you turn around and murder his children and vote Abimelek king, which is the exact opposite of what Gideon was all about. And this is all stated, and he flees and he stays alive. But Abimelek governs and creates this animosity between him and Shechem and all these other nations of Israel. And there's lots of fights and treachery based around Abimelek being king and trying to keep his position versus all of those who are rebelling against him for various reasons. The way Abimelek rules, the Lord, all of the above. And it kind of ends in just the fact that the wickedness that Abimelek did to the 70 brothers, the 70 sons of Gideon, ends up coming back to him, and he dies, and Shechem, the people who were hired and went along with this, also died. And these people are paying for this wickedness. So that's kind of what happened immediately after Gideon. After Gideon died, we have this judge who turned everyone to the Lord, helped everyone praise the Lord, believe in the Lord, be with the Lord. And immediately after, Abimelek takes this glory his father had and turns the Israelites back towards this evil. And luckily, we get to the next judge, Tola. And after the time of Abimelek, Tola rose to save Israel. He lived in Shamir, in the hill country of Ephraim, and he led Israel for 23 years. So he was our next judge. Very little on him. But Tola ruled for 23 years after Abimelek and kept the peace. Then following him was Jair from Gilead, who led Israel for 22 years. And he controlled the 30 towns of Gilead with his 30 sons. And when he died, he was buried. And come on. So after Abimelek, Tola and Jair held the peace for roughly 45 years. Then you have the big part of what we're going to discuss today is Jephthah. He is the next judge. And his story starts like many of the judges we've heard have started. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They served the Baals and the Ashereths, the gods of Aram, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of the Ammonites, and the gods of the Philistines. And because the Israelites forsook the Lord and no longer served him, he became angry with them. What we've seen before, the Israelites do evil and praise these false gods. And so the Lord is punishing them. And for 18 years, they're oppressed. And then, of course, as we've seen before, the Israelites cry out to the Lord that we have sinned against you, forsaking our God and serving Baal. And then in chapter 10, verse 11, the Lord replies. And it seems reasonable. When the Egyptians, the Amorites, the Ammonites, the Philistines, the Sidonians, the Amalekites, the Maonites oppressed you, and you cried for help, did I not save you from their hands? But you have forsaken me and served other gods, so I will no longer save you. Go and cry out to the gods you have chosen. Let them save you when you are in trouble. But the Israelites said to the Lord, we have sinned. Do with us whatever you think best, but please rescue us now. So the Israelites, realizing their gods haven't done what they've pleaded for them, turn to the Lord. And the Lord recognizes this. And he challenges their thoughts. Like, do you only turn to me in times of need? In times of peace, you turn away. And they promise that they'll do it again. They won't turn away. That the Lord can do whatever with them. And to show this, they get rid of the foreign gods and serve the Lord. And the Lord cannot bear Israel's misery any longer. So the Ammonites were called to arms and the Israelites assembled. And the people of Gilead wanted someone to lead themselves against the Ammonites. Then we get to Judges 11, which is where we learn who they choose to lead. Jephthah. Now, Jephthah has a very interesting story. So he is a Gileadite, so a person from Gilead. And his father was Gilead, but he was not his father's wife's son. His father had an affair outside of that, and that was his birth. So he gets to an age in which he would be able to inherit, and Gilead's other sons, who were of his main wife, were to inherit. So they drove Jephthah away. You can't get the inheritance of our family, they said, because you are the son of another woman. So Jephthah flees and goes to Tob, and he finds followers and leads people there. Now, he doesn't lead the best of the best. He's leading scoundrels because he's fled. But sometime later, which is the time that we just discussed, the Ammonites have planned to attack Gilead and the Israelites. So Gilead, Jephthah's father, who abandoned him, goes to get Jephthah from Tob, and they ask him, "Come, be our commander so we can fight the Ammonites." And of course, Jephthah is questioning this entirety. Why call me back now when you're in trouble and you drove me away before? Similar parallel to the Lord being driven out and coming back. So you would think this is probably, and at least I'm for sure, that this is the Lord calling Jephthah, because he is in a position where he understands this cycle. And the elders of Gilead say to him, "Nevertheless, we turn to you now, so come with us and fight the Ammonites. You will be head over all of us who live in Gilead." So they're giving Jephthah an alternative. You fight for us, and you can rule Gilead. He takes the land that he was removed from previously, that was not of his. So Jephthah went with the elders, and the people made him head and commander over them. And he repeated all his words before the Lord in Mizpah. So Jephthah not only leads the army, but leads the army for the Lord. Now, Jephthah, before he just starts a war, he sends a messenger to the king of the Ammonites. His messenger he messages to him as to why he's attacking the country. And the king of the Ammonites answered Jephthah's messengers, "When Israel came up out of Egypt, they took away my land from Arnon to the Jabbok, all the way to the Jordan. Now give it back peaceably." And we're here in Judges 11:14, and Jephthah sends back the messengers to Ammonite king. And his message is what we're going to focus on mostly right now. Is that Jephthah sent his messengers to the Ammonite king and saying, "This is what Jephthah says. Israel did not take the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites." So when they came up out of Egypt, Israel was in the wilderness and wandering to the promised land. And it talks about how the Israelites sent messengers to kings and asked them for permission to go through the country. Many of the kings deny them entry, and they stay in that land, and the Lord gives the land over to the Israelites. Then we get to verse 18, where they travel through the wilderness, skirting the lands of Edom and Moab, so the area around Moab, and they camp on the other side of Arnon, which is what the king of the Ammonites, their previous land. They did not enter the territory of Moab, for the Arnon was its border. Then the Israelites sent messengers to the Sihon, Sihon, king of the Ammonites, the previous Ammonite king, way back, who ruled Heshbon, and said to him, "Let us pass through your country to our own place." A request to just travel through peaceably. Sihon, however, did not trust Israel to pass through their territory. He mustered all his troops and encamped at Jahaz and fought with Israel. So then the Lord, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and his whole army into Israel's hands, and they defeated him. So Israel took over the lands of the Amorites who lived in that city, capturing all of it from Arnon to the Jabbok and from the desert to the Jordan. So the Lord gave the land to the Israelites because they were challenged rather than allowed peaceably to go through the land. And what Jephthah says to the king is this: "Now, since the Lord, the God of Israel, has driven out the Amorites before his people Israel, what right do you have to take it over? Will you not take what your God Chemosh gives you? Likewise, whatever the Lord, our God, has given us, we will possess. Are you any better than Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever quarrel with Israel or fight with them? For 300 years, Israel occupied Heshbon, Ar, and the surrounding settlements all the way to the towns along Arnon. Why didn't you retake them during that time? I have not wronged you, but you are doing me wrong by waging war against me. Let the Lord, the judge, decide this dispute this day between the Israelites and the Ammonites." So Jephthah calls out to the king, "You have had plenty of opportunities to attack us in the last 300 years. Our Lord gave us the land. Do you not take what your God supposedly gives you?" Of course, the king of Ammon pays no attention to the message Jephthah sends him. So they go to war. Jephthah tries to reason peaceably, and it doesn't work. He reasons it through the Lord. He brings up that the Lord gave them this land, and the Lord will guide and decide who wins in this war, the Israelites or the Ammonites. So the Spirit of the Lord comes on Jephthah, crosses Gilead and the Manasseh, passes through Mitzpah to Gilead, and from there he advances against the Ammonites. Now Jephthah makes a vow to the Lord. If he gives the Ammonites into his hands, whatever comes out of his door to meet him when he returns in triumph from the Ammonites will be the Lord's, and he will offer them as an offering. So Jephthah fights the Ammonites, and the Lord gives him into the hands, and Israel subdues Ammon. Now, when Jephthah returns to his home in Mitzpah, his daughter comes out. So his daughter is now the offering. And he lets his daughter do what he does, but he does do what he ultimately promised the Lord. And from each year after that, young women of Israel go out and commemorate what the daughter of Jephthah did. His daughter, even though he promised to give her as an offering, replies to him that you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me as you promised, now that the Lord avenged your enemies, the Ammonites, and grant me a request. So his daughter recognized the Lord and the Lord's power and the Lord's promise, and the importance of maintaining that promise. Now, Jephthah, after that, has to fight the Ephraimites who didn't join the war because Jephthah didn't call them because they didn't want to. And that's all of chapter 12. And we're not really going to go through that story of which Israelites win the war. They did have more wars, which Jephthah won, because the Ephraimites were fighting for their own selfish needs and not listening to the Lord, just calling that he had chose. So, at the very end of chapter 11, we learn, or at the very end of Jephthah's story in Judges 12, we learn that Jephthah leads Israel for 6 years after he defeats the Ammonites and he defeats the Ephraimites. So Jephthah leads Israel for 6 years. Then he dies and is buried in Gilead. So those are all who we covered today. We see going from Gideon's height when he called the Lord to a very low with Abimelek's torturous reign for the short time that he did as king, to Tola and Jair, who held peace for 45 years, but did not really have much on their story. So we don't know how they held the peace. Then finally we get to Jephthah, who, regardless of the fact that he is removed from his home, he's refused all of his rights until he's needed and people call to him, still follows what the Lord commanded, still focuses on the Lord when he tries to command an army against another person. Doesn't turn it to him, who he has the commanding power. He has the head of the Gilead area. He doesn't turn the power to him, but to the Lord, even when talking to this king. And even after his fight, he follows his promise to the Lord. There are some times where you are challenged and where things are done wrong to you, but then you're still asked to assist those who do wrong. So this week I want you to think on the story of Jephthah. Last week we thought on Gideon and how we have doubts similar to Gideon, and how we're still called. Now I want us this week to think on the story of Jephthah. Remember, we're not judges in the way that Jephthah is or Gideon is, who lead physical armies as commanders. You may, but rarely are we commanding an army to go out and defeat people trying to take our land in the way that they are, with weapons and swords. But we're still challenged to fight. We're challenged to guide people. So I want you to think similar to Jephthah's story. Are you being called to guide people who may have put you off, who may have disdained you, turned you away at some point, like Jephthah's family? He was removed from Gilead. He was kicked out of his inheritance, only to later be called back with the Lord and given something, but from the same people who removed him. So this week, think on who you might be called to guide that you may not want to guide, who may have turned away from you. Let me know what you're thinking. Talk to someone else. Just think on it. Where is this judge reflected in your life? That's all for today. Make sure to check out the songs, the other videos, subscribe to keep up to date. But I really hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope to see you next week, and I hope you guys really think on this. Bye, everyone.